Hello and welcome to episode 19 of When Life Gives You Lemons, Go Vegan. I am your host, Corinne, and this episode is with Christine, and she shares her incredible story of living with Polycystic Ovarian Syndrome and, very few infrequent periods over a span of 8 years where she was desperately trying to fall pregnant with her first baby. And I don't know, this episode for me almost isn't so much about how she adopted a mostly low-fat, whole food, vegan diet, and more just about the incredible story itself. I just was really moved by this story as a woman and a mother and someone who I never had any issues with fertility myself, but I know so many women who have had polycystic ovarian syndrome, who have had infrequent periods, who have struggled with infertility and IVF, and who are still or were, desperate to start their families. So this story really moved me, and I know that so many women out there will be moved by this story. It has such an incredible outcome, which you find out in the first 10 minutes. But yeah, you find out in the thumbnail as well. So yes, so she had 8 years of infertility, and then she was blessed to conceive triplets, which is just mind-blowing. As a mother of just singletons, I can't imagine that, going from 8 years trying to get pregnant and then to get pregnant with 3 babies at once is just a miracle. So her story is truly incredible. Christine, she feels that when she adopted, after trying everything like holistic medicine, alternative medicines, IVF, all the different types of things, and she really credits adopting a low-fat, whole food vegan diet, helping her to regulate her periods, helping her to then be eligible for the IVF program, and also helping her to lose some weight along the way as well. So yes, her story is incredible. Thank you so much, Christine, for sharing your story. Your babies are so beautiful. I really love speaking with you and looking at all your beautiful photos of your beautiful family and just hearing about the struggles. So many women aren't like, I was so blessed with my pregnancy, my births, and being able to hold my babies straight away. So I can't even begin to fathom what it was like to go through what you went through. And I know that so many women will benefit from hearing that they're not alone, that other women are out there who are also struggling or who have struggled and have come out the other side with some beautiful babies. So thank you so much again, and enjoy episode 19. So, hello, Christine. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm really good. So I've given you a little bit of an introduction in the pre-recorded intro. And if you'd just like to expand on that and share your story with the listeners, that would be fantastic.
Sure. I am Christine. I am 29 years old. I have recently given birth to 3 triplet boys.
Holy cow, congratulations.
It's a bit of a crazy time for me. I've got a condition that's called PCOS, and it causes me to have cysts on my ovaries, and it causes a lot of grief for my hormones, and it becomes very imbalanced, causing a lot of issues like facial hair, irregular periods, weight gain, a few things like that. And I've had this since having, my regular cycle. It's never been a normal cycle like girls should. I was on the pill until 19, and once I was off it, I found out through blood work, since my cycle didn't turn up, that I had PCOS. I then did a form of medication called metformin, and it's meant for diabetics to try and regulate your insulin levels, since PCOS is linked to sugar intake, and it's linked to all your hormones. And it still didn't help function my system. And as the years went on and the older I got, the more I would like to have kids one day, and it causes a lot of issues for fertility when you don't have a cycle that often, and then you find out that you don't ovulate. normally like a normal person.
That would have been really worrying if you're wanting to have children and you don't have a cycle.
It is a bit worrisome, and as I got older and the more I was trying, I went to professional people for fertility, and they put you on other medication to help ovulate and stimulate you to drop an egg to try and have a baby. And the first couple of rounds didn't work for me with the medication. I ended up having a few years where I thought, well, I will Google and find out whatever information I could find for myself to try and see what other people are going through with the same condition. And I stumbled across I Love Raw Jam on YouTube. And she has the same condition as me, and she went vegan and her cycle went back to normal. She had tests to try and see if she was fertile. She's 100% all good, and it kind of opened my eyes to think, well, if I ate a certain way, maybe I could do the same thing and be able to have kids on my own. So I went on my journey of being a vegan for a bit. I started with Raw to 4. I did the I Love Raw Jams diet cycle. I did juicing, raw eating, and then eventually I got so busy working quite long hours that I had food delivered that were quite healthy meals in my area, which are called Revive Canteen. They're linked in with Secret Creek Cafe that's locally where I live.
Where do you live?
So I live in the end of the Blue Mountains, and Secret Creek Cafe is in Lithgow.
Oh, wow, yep.
And they have a sanctuary where all these animals are protected, and they're pretty cool. So they have a spin-off company that's for, like, delivery meals and...
And they're vegan meals, yeah?
Vegan meals, yeah. So it made me so I could focus, still eating well, but I could go to the gym, work hard at work. And I was very determined to try and win at this episode that I was trying to go through of this goal that I wanted of having kids. So, and because I guess I didn't want to wait around to see if my body would regulate on its own in case I missed the opportunity by the age I wanted to be, I went to IVF, and they said to me I was too heavy for cycles to go with them, and I had to drop enough weight for a cycle to use for IVF. So my goal was to get under a BMI level through to start IVF cycle, and I dropped 16 kilos to start that. I find it a bit difficult that they go through a BMI input to find if you're healthy or not to start a cycle, when I was working out 5 days a week and putting on muscle mass, which I was quite healthy, and the weight goes up, but then it's muscle, not fat. So it was a bit of a to and fro, me getting angry at myself sometimes, but I know I'm doing the healthier option to get to the point that I got to. I did my first cycle with medicine from IVF. That was in February 2017. And with my first cycle of medicine, I was told they regularly test throughout the couple of weeks of taking the medicine.
Yeah.
And my body had over 50 eggs stored in my system that were too small, but out of the 50 eggs I grew one at 18 mils and two in the other ovary for 12 mils, and they said that they only take 18 mils or higher for doing an operation, so they didn't want to act on for one egg, just for one operation for that one egg, because they can harvest the rest of the eggs to do multiple cycles afterwards. So devastated, they said just try and drop that one egg with the last medication round of ovulation and see if we could catch that one egg. and my body dropped all 3 eggs and I became pregnant with 3 babies.
Holy cow.
The nurses that were part of the IVF have never had someone fall on their first try, haven't fallen pregnant with triplets. So it's a bit of a big scenario for them. Without being vegan to start all this off, from something that's gone from a irregular period of 4 cycles a year or less to a very normal cycle now, you can't start IVF without having your cycle. You've got to start it when you have a cycle. So I couldn't even, if I didn't have a regular cycle to start, I would have had to wait months and months and months and months before I could even start something. So I find that eating the way that I did helped me achieve the goal that I wanted.
Oh, that's so amazing. What a story. So you have 3. Did you have are they identical?
No, because identical was when an egg splits.
Oh,
so
same
I had
eggs.
3
Yes,
eggs.
3 eggs.
They're not
Sorry.
identical.
Wow. Boys and girls?
All boys.
All
so
boys.
it's even a less of a chance to have all of them to be the same sex.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
What are their names? Is that okay?
Yeah, no, that's okay. So the Onyx, then Odin and Orion. So they're all start with an O. It made the nurses a bit crazy in the beginning, trying to figure out who's who and all
They're
being an O.
beautiful names, though. How old are they now?
So they're corrected technically to 2 and a bit months, but they are 5 months. So they were born about 3 months earlier than they should have been born. So they were born at 28 weeks.
Oh, wow, that made teeny.
Yeah, tiny. The went from 1.3 nearly to 1.2 and 1.1 kilos. A regular baby would have been all of them combined.
Oh, wow. How do you feel wanting one baby and ending up with 3 babies?
I feel pretty blessed. It was a very long road, 8 years of trying to have a baby to get to this stage. And I feel like if I gave up and just threw in the towel, but that's not my personality. If I want something, I'll strive for it, even though it might take me ages. Yeah, I will go for it. So I think having that perseverance, even though there's a lot of pitfalls when you get depressed or, you know, you get backtracked or, you know, there's always another option to trial. I find that, you know, I've had a lot of people support me. My mum is very supportive of me. She's great. I don't think, you know, after having all the babies and even before having them, she'll take me to every appointment. She went to every appointment with me.
Oh, that is amazing. But are you getting much sleep? Is it hard to manage 3 babies?
Because I haven't had kids previously, it's the only thing I know. I didn't get much sleep in the beginning. They were in hospital for 52 days in the NICU unit, which is intensive care for babies. And then they were in their local hospital for 21 days because they had to learn how to feed properly, because they get to a stage where in the womb they learn to suck their hands, and because they were out of the womb they didn't have that suction proper because they were born too early. So they had to go into hospital to learn how to actually feed properly, because when they're in the NICU unit they actually get tube fed through their nose. Because they had to go through all this trial, and when they were at their local hospital, I was able to stay with them instead of visiting them daily. I got to live in the hospital, so they were fed every hour. So, and newborns get fed every 3 hours. So it's one every hour. So I never had any sleep. And then as the time has progressed, I've moved them all into one feeding schedule now. So they get fed one after the other, and then nowadays they get fed every 3 hours or so, but they get to sleep throughout the night and they get a bigger bottle, so they do get enough of their feed support.
Oh, wow. That is tough. I take my hat off to you, because I'm a mother of singletons and I thought that was difficult. So 3 is another level. Do you have a lot of support?
Yeah, I do have, like, my mum is just my rock. She just, as I said, she was at my first appointment when I was pregnant. She found out with me that there were triplets in that appointment. She's been to every appointment ever since. She visited me in hospital when I was in hospital when I gave birth to them, because I was in hospital for about 8 days after they were born. They were born emergency cesarean, so I got preeclampsia afterwards, and I was putting myself into intensive care, so I couldn't see my boys for a couple of days.
Oh, no.
Yeah. I was hooked up to 1 million cords and that, because I had to have some magnesium sulfate drip of medicine through my body to try and help my preeclampsia.
Could you just explain preeclampsia to anyone who's listening who doesn't know what that is?
It's to do with your blood pressure. I had high blood pressure just at the very end of the week before the boys were born, but it could happen before pregnancy, before you have birth, or it can happen after you have birth. They said to me that it's quite critical if you don't act on it quick after birth as well, because sometimes they send mothers home without getting it treated, and they'll have an episode and then they could die. Apparently it can cause dizziness, you can faint, you can have seizures. It's to do with the blood level, I think, being too high. So they've got to put this drip in you to help. I think it's just something to stimulate the body to help level it all out. My legs ended up shaking uncontrollably after birth, and that's how they knew that I had preeclampsia. I had to be on blood pressure medicine once I got out of the hospital, but I'm not on it anymore. But I've just got to, if I ever have an episode where I'm dizzy, that's something to do with my blood pressure, and then I would know I'd have to go back onto medicine. But I've never been on blood pressure medicine ever until having them, though I've always had a good blood pressure level.
I'm just going to backtrack a little bit. So when you started, basically a low-fat, whole-food, plant-based diet, because I don't imagine that the meal delivery service was very high in fat, was it?
It was not set on something. Like, it was healthy enough, but, it wasn't. It's not like 80-10-10, like where you'd have 10% fat. So I think it would vary depending on what meal that they made, but they were quite, reasonable.
Yeah, good. But when did you start noticing differences in your period?
Probably under 6 months of being a vegan, and I wasn't doing too much other than change my eating patterns, like cutting out all the foods that I was originally eating heaps of, like dairy and meat. I found it wasn't as, frequent 30 days like everyone else, or less, but it was a lot more than the four a year or less that I was having, because if you have 4 or less, it turns into cancer with PCOS. So it gets a bit of, they tell you to go on the pill, which masks the whole situation. It doesn't actually fix it. That's why when you go on the pill, I find that being on the pill when I was younger, it masks the whole situation, and I didn't actually get to find out completely what my whole condition was until I was off it.
See, I'd never even thought about that as the side effect of being on contraception, on the contraceptive pill.
It just, because you have a regular cycle, because it's making you have a cycle, it doesn't actually fix or resolve anything if it doesn't know what's wrong. And you're having all these other symptoms like the weight gain and, hair falls out and you have patchy skin and facial hair and all that sort of stuff. Then when you're off a pill, it goes a bit crazy because you don't get to have a cycle. It's a bit bizarre, but I guess it depends on what type of personality you are. If you're trying to have kids one day like I am, it's a bit, hard to try and deal with. But I guess it's beneficial for people that don't like to have them as often. But
yeah, I was just wondering, because you said that you loved cheese and all those things before adopting a plant-based diet. Was there a big struggle at the start? Was there struggles transitioning?
I think the amount of fibre that I was having was a big start to my system. I think there was moments where I did miss it. My husband doesn't eat the same as what I do. So when you're in the same household as someone else that eats different from you, things like smells and stuff can trigger you in the beginning to go, well, I feel like that too. It's a mindset too. You can always do your own thing. If he's ordered pizza, you can always either make or order pizza that's in a vegan way, so you don't actually miss out as such. But if you're eating healthy, you just got to stick to it and know that doing these things will get you to the end result.
Yeah. So basically, we often talk about having a big enough why, and lots of people who make these types of changes have a catalyst. They have a big enough why, a health catalyst or a fear or a thing like yourself wanting children. Like 8 years is a long time. I'm guessing that it got to the stage where you were like, I'm willing to do anything.
Basically, it's like a cycle. You go through going, I plan to do this and see if that works. And you do many, many tries of this one plan, doesn't succeed. And then you go through a pitfall of depression, and then you start back up again. And it's how my cycle of 8 years was basically, I'll pick myself back up. Let's try plan B. Let's try plan C. Like, I just went through each of the stages, but health-wise, I had a lot of issues before going vegan other than my PCOS. I had to take probiotics to help me with my IBS, and IBS was triggered once I had my gallbladder removed, and I can't tolerate dairy from that. And so even eliminating those products out of my diet, I don't have to take a probiotic. I don't have to worry about, going out in public and having to rush to the bathroom because of IBS. I found that my skin doesn't break out as much. I do break out an occasional bump here and there, but it's not like it used to be. Being that the condition I've got makes you break out with acne too. So I found it got under more control, I guess. I go to the bathroom a bit more, but that's from the intake of what, fiber in your diet.
Everyone's shocked by that at the start.
Yeah. I find that I don't have to worry so much about my what intake I'm taking because I eat such a variety of food now. I'm not as fussy, I suppose, with my food. I am fussy with some things, but I eat so much more than I used to. I guess I'm willing to try more things. It helps you experiment with more foods, being more creative in the kitchen. Bonus is weight loss. For me, I think it's more, feeling more like a woman because I can have a cycle a bit more than the 4 times a year one. Now I'm having it so regular that I'm normal, and to me that's great. It's like everyday life now. Because I've been vegan now for over 3 years now, it just feels normal. It's not like I'd ever backtrack, because I think in the beginning I was more like, I'll do this for diet, see if I can get any benefit from it, and I'll go back if I feel like it doesn't work. And I've never looked back. I've always stuck to it. Even if I changed diet patterns in a vegan, juicing to raw or to, eating normally a vegan or not, raw to 4 or something, it's all vegan food. It never varied from it. And the more I researched about it, the more learning about what it can affect on the body and all the stuff that they put into all those, the dairy and the meat and stuff. I didn't want that excess hormones into my body, which is not controlled with the hormones I've got already. It was just my mind was set going, no, I don't have to go backwards.
So how was it with you said your husband, he's not your partner, is not vegan. How do you find that? Was he supportive of you going vegan, or how did you find that working on that as a couple?
He's very supportive of anything I choose to do. He could see that I'm no longer, I guess, as having issues with my condition, and we came to an agreement because he's adamant of his own opinion on meat and dairy, and I'm not going to be able to change him on any of that. And, maybe he'll see that there's a difference in me and maybe he'll do the same, but unlikely because he's set in his own way, is that if we ended up having girls, he would allow them to be a vegan diet. He's not very adamant with the boys that we've got at the moment to have a vegan diet. Though I think I would be educating them as they get a bit older to make their own choices in life and then go from there. But I think because he knows how much, if we both have come to an agreement, if we had a girl, she might have the same condition as me, and life better for her if she ever wants kids one day, to have the options that she wants, like I could with having a regular cycle to have kids. It's
bit of a no-brainer.
Yeah, no-brainer. So, we'll play it by ear, but it's hard in some respects when his family are one-sided, and my family's very supportive. But, you just do what you got to do, and
that's all you can do. Like, you have to just do what works for you, and, you'll be doing lots and lots of food preparation for your kids. So I guess then you'll
for sure.
You'll have,
make it
you'll be able to make it your way, and when the kids are with him and he wants to, then he can make different decisions. But, that's still a lot of meals that will be fairly healthy plant-based meals, which will be wonderful.
Yeah. And, being that I'm the sole cooker, it'd be fine. I don't cook for him. I just cook for myself, and they'll just eat what I'm eating.
What would a day in the life of your eating be like now?
Because I put on weight from being in the hospital and coming out and sitting down and not being able to work out as much, as I'm trying to venture when I can outside. I basically, with my exercise regime, is very different from working out every morning and going to work. I basically have a twin pram. I go out with two of them in the pram and one strapped onto me, and that's how I venture outside, unless someone's with a single pram next to me, and with my mum, and we go for a walk together. But she doesn't come as often as like every day. So I have an elliptical trainer in the house. So whenever the boys are settled and I know they're going to sleep for a little bit, I might be able to pop onto it, but it's not as frequently as I'd like.
Yeah, of course. I'm amazed that you're doing that.
It's just that I feel like because I was on bed rest a lot of my pregnancy, I was told I couldn't work out. So I feel like I haven't worked out for a whole year. So I have to get back to the regime that I feel like my body's aching for it, because I've been waiting to be free with my body to do whatever I want. Yeah, and I think sitting down and not, because I was in a standing job and, and working out, it's just those things, I think my body craves to do something rather than sitting down all day. And plus it gives me time out from them to do something for me.
You're so much more switched on than I was when I had my first. You've had 3 all at once, and you're already into the self-care stuff, got it down.
I guess it's just 8 years of planning. I guess with the eating for myself, I have recently started the last 2 weeks eating whole plant-based diet, mostly through the high carb Hannah stuff.
Yeah, perfect. She's great.
It's a bit hard eliminating salt and oil for me because you get the sugar from fruit, but I'm so far done 2 weeks of it. Bit boring with some of the stuff without the stuff when you crave for salt, but I'm going to buy some of I think it's Benson Tasty Salt or something. It's supposed to be seasoning for salt free, but it tastes like salt. So I'm going to see what that's going to be like if I can order some online. I feel like everything I've got to do is online because venturing outside is quite tough. So.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's because I think that, going low fat and going whole food is easy, but the salt and oil, that was the hardest thing for me as well. You get so used to cooking and eating a certain way and having that type of flavour in your food. It's a massive difference.
When I got to the hospital, because I was eating a lot of hospital food and it was awful, and then I just ended up eating whatever left in the freezer and fridge, which is all because I ate whatever I wanted as being pregnant, because I got to the stage that I was like, oh, okay, well, I can eat whatever I want of vegan food. So I was just eating all the junk food, vegan food that I had in the cupboards. And then I think because I'm sitting down so often, it's now to the point of I'm feeling not myself anymore. So I'm trying to go back to feeling more healthier. I think my also aim is to drop enough weight so I don't have to use IVF if I want to go have more kids.
Oh my goodness, you're incredible. You're going to have more babies.
Well, I would like to have at least, I don't know, I'd be happy with another 2.
Wow, you're incredible. I've got 2 kids. I had 1 and I was like, never again. Even though it was beautiful, I had great pregnancy, great birth. I just found it so overwhelming having so much of my life sacrificed to another being. even though I loved him so much, I just found it I wanted 4 originally. And then when he came out, I was like, that's it.
I guess having dedicated, I feel like I've dedicated 8 years of my life just focused on something, even though I might have deterred and got depressed. I always had that focus, and that energy is now put into the kids as like, and I feel whole, like I've gotten the complete feeling that I needed. I just love kids in general. Like I was a nanny before.
And being pregnant again. You only got 1 pregnancy. Now you get to do it again.
I would love to do it all naturally now. I'd love to see what it's like to actually give birth normally without having to be told it has to be an emergency cesarean, and have the options that I originally wanted when I first was pregnant, going, I want to choose all these things in life. And, like a water birth, couldn't have that. So, and having them in hospital for so long and having the issues that, when that plays a part. One of my boys got sick with the flu and I wasn't allowed to touch him for 2 weeks.
Oh my God, my heart's broken.
Heartbreaking when you can touch the other 2, and it's because they don't want him to make you sick, to make the other 2 sick, and he's sick and you just want to touch him to comfort him. So it can be very tough.
I have tears in my eyes just imagining being a mum to a little tiny baby and you can't touch him for 2 weeks.
And I also had, one of them was born with a level 2 brain bleed, though it's something that they can correct on their own when it's 1 and 2 level, but when it's 3 and 4, they can't. And they had to take a sample out of his spine to see if he's got an infection through the brain bleed, if it's leaked into different places, and having to be told this baby that's only a week or 2 old have a spinal tap to get a sample out of it, and the first sample sometimes not get enough and they might have to do it a few times. It's heartbreaking, and luckily enough the first sample was fine, and as time has progressed the brain bleed's gone. So he's worked on it himself.
Do they get anaesthetic for that? Spinal tap?
Babies don't really get anaesthetic when it becomes that sort of stuff. They get a thing that's sugar drops, and the sugar drops basically make them a bit drunk in a way, and they don't feel it as good. When it's like a sensation that they get from having it. So they give it to them when they've got to do blood samples and needles and that. I feel like a lot of it went out of my control when example, I wanted to supply enough supply for breast milk, which I pumped for 3 months of their life, and not being able to have them attached to me. I think my milk supply dropped off a lot, even though I took a lot of medicine to try and help stimulate it, and having enough to supply for 3. And every time they grew, they would have more, and I'll get to a point where yes, I'm making enough for all 3. And then all of a sudden it's nope, they've grown more. You've got to add more to your supply. And it ended up being half and half with formula and breast milk, and then by the time they were in my care in the hospital when I could live with them for the 21 days, having to function with them and pump, and because they weren't they had to learn to breastfeed and bottle feed at the same time. It was just too much for not enough time for myself in the 3 hours to try and feed one every hour and, pump and, spend all the quality time with them. So it ended up being, and my supply dropped off. So I was like, okay, well, it was just formula now. But if I had a single birth, I think, and having that connection straight away, having them latch straight away, maybe my supply might have lasted a lot longer. But it's hard when they're in a crib and you've got a picture to look at. It's a bit different from having a baby attached to you and take all these bags to the hospital in a freezer cooler to just go, here's all my milk. And you don't actually physically feed them. It goes down a tube so they just basically plunge it down into their stomach.
That is so hard. I was a terrible breast pumper, and even if I had my babies with me, I still could barely get anything out. It's just which is one of the reasons why I'm vegan, because I just know how tough it is to breastfeed or pump, that's tough. So just having someone steal your baby and then breastfeed for somebody else to steal your milk, and pump twice a day for some other species to drink your milk. Oh my gosh, my nipples are sore just thinking about it.
I just, it's, what you had to like persevere with, like, be with them as I was at their side every day, and I had to visit them every night. So basically they got to a point going, you need to come in and do more contact through trying to help them to breastfeed. So because I'd visit once a day, because I wasn't allowed to drive at that stage because having a cesarean.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I didn't even think about that. Golly.
Yeah, my mum would drive me daily to visit them. So I'd spend, because they'd have visiting hours. It was really tough. So they were basically they had cares every 3 hours, was it? Must have been, or maybe every 4 hours. So they had a schedule plan of care times, and they had visitation times. And so when my mum dropped me off, I could go visit them anytime I wanted. But when it becomes other people that aren't mother and father, even grandparents, so she's their grandmother, she could only come through visitation times. So she could only basically come for 1 hour in the morning from 11 to 12. And then she could come again for 2 hours in the evening. So because I was dropped off every morning to spend time with each of them, she could basically only come in for an hour. So she had to wait around in the neighbourhood for many hours between while I was hanging out with the babies, come to visit throughout that time schedule of that 1 hour. And we found out towards the end of it that no one actually said to us that other people could hold the babies other than the parents, was that she could hold them through the carers' time. So basically one baby was only allocated during that time for carers' time, so she could only hold one baby out of the 3 for that 1 hour. And then the 2 in the evening, one didn't link up with any of them. And then the other hour in the evening was another baby. So my mum could hold at least 2 in the whole time frame of being in that hospital, but never hold the last one.
Oh, that's so heartbreaking.
It's like, when this is her first grandchildren, so she was so, it was a bit heartbreaking for her too, because like she's very motherly and wants to, she's very protective and, cuddly, nurturing, and, having told you can't hold any of them, or one in particular, but, and then by the time they got to the actual local hospital, because they were living in the hospital for those amount of days, we were able to pass them to each other and actually feel more like it's like the connection to home. So we're able to do a lot more with them than being told, no, this is not your time schedule, you cannot touch them. They've got very strict rules I guess they have to be, but it's hard when you got multiple. If you had a single birth list and that happened, you'd have more time with them, because I think the care times might have linked better with the visiting times. Because you've got to spend that time quality throughout the 3 of them too.
Yeah, 3 babies. Oh, my goodness.
But having to travel, so when I had to pump, they wanted me to come in twice to try and get them to learn to breastfeed properly. I'd come in the morning, so I'd be there for 4 hours from, I think I'd start at 9 maybe, so 10, 11, 12, 1 o'clock I'd leave, go home, eat, pump as much as I could. For every 2 to 3 hours I'd try and pump, and then I'd go back at 9 p.m. in the evening and do the whole cycle again. So every 12 hours I was there twice. It made it tough because I'd be driving in the middle of the night, half sleepy, because it wasn't around the corner. It's about a 45-minute drive from my parents, and I ended up staying at my parents from the end of my end of my pregnancy to by the boys were out of that hospital to the second hospital closer to my house. I was only given the option to give birth in 2 of the hospitals, and one is closer to the city, which is way too far from where I live, and the other one was 45 minutes from my parents' place, or it's about an hour and a half from where I live. So being that's closer, if there was a problem, I was put on bed rest by end of 23 weeks, close to 24 weeks. So I was on bed rest and then I had them at the end of 28 weeks, so 28 weeks and 5 days. So yeah, spending that time in my parents, and I'd have to go to weekly doctor visits during that bed rest stage too. So non-stop trips to the hospital. I'm a bit over the hospital.
I bet you are. But still, what an amazing story. honestly, coming from 8 years with PCOS and with irregular periods and, all of those issues that you had to end up with 3 beautiful, healthy babies now.
I really think also because I've been vegan for over 3 years, and being that I was eating quite well through my pregnancy of, healthily, and went with cravings too, but, I had healthy food that was all vegan, having that helped them put enough weight on to get to the point of they were healthy enough. Like even all the nurses and that, when they were in there going, oh, how much they've developed and grown and they're doing so well without, like they didn't, because I had them so urgently and sporadically, they give you a steroid shot for lung development because they were going to get born early. And I didn't have any of that because they just came sporadically early, and they didn't really have much problems with their breathing. I think that's also part of my lifestyle of diet too.
I would really like to know if other women out there who are having fertility issues, what would be your 3 biggest tips or pieces of advice for women who are going through something similar to what you went through?
For me, don't lose hope of motivation to get to the point of where you want to be. If you decide, I want, lots of kids or 1 kid or, any kid, don't think that's your last option to do this. There's always multiple different methods and ways. Research, have a look to see what's out there, because once one plan doesn't work and you've trialed it for so long, try a new one, because that's what happened to me. I always have that dedication. Well, to me, I feel like I was always dedicated to planning and researching to find something new or something like that. I do find that with my condition, if someone else has the same condition, I always recommend them to eat the same lifestyle as a vegan lifestyle, even if it might be junk food or it might of the vegan lifestyle, or it could be healthy. Any of those, I still had a regular period throughout all of it. I feel my best when I'm eating healthier, but even if they wanted to start out one way in the lifestyle and then continue on to get healthier, or they want to have a regular cycle to try and naturally, I always recommend to do that. So that's 2 things. The third thing I would say, I guess, always surround yourself with supporting people. I've had a few issues with one person in particular throughout my whole journey, and to always have the supporting people beside you to help you go through any of the humps and bumps along the way, because you don't want someone dragging you down at the same time.
It's so important. I think a lot of people, that's been their tip as well, getting a community around you of people who are supporting you and rooting for you to succeed.
So they're my top 3 things I would recommend.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with me and the listeners for this podcast, because I know myself many women who are living with PCOS, Polycystic Ovarian Syndrome, if I didn't mention that earlier, if we didn't cover that earlier, but it's an issue that's affecting so many women, and I think more and more from what it sounds like. Maybe I'm just in that space of people having babies. That's why it seems like it's more and more, but it does, and it's just so sad.
I think it's 1 in 8 women have it. That's what I've read somewhere. It's pretty common, and some people, because they might have the PCO without the syndrome part at the end, they might not show the symptoms, but they, other than having not been able to be fertile, to be able to have kids. Otherwise, if they're showing the symptoms, it means that they've got the condition, so they've got all the symptoms that go along with being infertile. So even with both, you're still some are hidden amongst the society. So it is hard, and I guess just persevere, I guess, is my motto for it.
Persevere. It's a good motto to have. Congratulations. It's such a beautiful story to go from 8 years of really struggling, it's like your body's failing you, and as a woman feeling, not having your cycle and all those things, facial hair, all those things is so damaging on your emotional and mental health. From what I imagine, it hasn't happened to me, but to get through the other side and give birth and have 3 babies as a result, 2 babies is like, whoa. 1 baby would have been amazing. 3 babies. Holy moly. It's just such a wonderful story. When I saw it on Facebook, when I asked you to come on the show, I knew that it would be a story that so many people would just find so, wonderful and amazing and hopeful, because it is such a hope-filled, incredible journey that you've been on.
I find that it's worth all the tears and all the pain that I had to go through just to get to the point that I am now. I don't know. It's my completing story of my family.
So tell me your favorite, most best part since becoming a mother.
Oh, there's so many.
It's hard to pick just one. Just pick one. It doesn't have to be the best. It just can be the one that comes to mind.
Can I give you two?
Yeah, of course, absolutely.
Well, the best moment I've had with them is leaving the hospitals. I was so excited to leave. I packed up all their stuff so quickly, and I just wanted to get out of there straight away because I felt like I was living. For me, it's the only thing it's the only thing they knew was a hospital, but I knew there was life outside the hospital. So it was like the most celebrating time for me because I was able to do the things I wanted to do without the restriction of what they wanted to implement as doctors, because they have their own routines and checks, and they wake you up for monitoring or babies up for monitoring, and at home you don't have to do that, and you can actually do your own thing as a mother and actually feel like more of a mother than, in a hospital environment. And the best feeling so far, they've all started smiling lately. So they're all, for me, like they wake up in the morning and they just give you the biggest smile, and it might be early hours of the morning at 3 or 4 a.m. and you're half asleep. I just smile back at them because it just makes me so happy that they're content, I'm content. I got, they're my boys. So like, for me, it's very satisfying. It's like I've gotten to a happy spot in my life.
Well, you so deserve it. 8 years is long. It's a long time to fight so hard for something that you want, to have your family.
I feel like even though I tried all these methods like acupuncture, Chinese medicine, I took medicine from a fertility doctor that didn't work. And none of that actually fixed my condition. And luckily enough, I felt like there must be something more than life with having this condition. Someone else might have done something that might have fixed or helped or something. And luckily enough, there's social media where you can actually Google and find something, and seeing that other people that have the condition and, oh, look, they've actually helped rectify the whole issue with just eating one way. And some people go for vegan for animals or eco-friendly stuff or health. For me, it was just like, why not? And for me, it just feel like it's just opened my eyes to going, well, it's fixed so much other things in my life.
It's just, I'm speechless. I'm speechless. I'm speechless. It's such a beautiful story. And I'm just thinking about taking your babies home, like thinking about putting myself in your position. It's just would have been such a beautiful...
Like a normal pregnancy, like you're in hospital, you have them, maybe a couple of days later you get to go home with them, you get to do all the motherly stuff. I had to, because I feel like, yes, I had to wait 8 years to have them. I also had to wait months of them and being in a hospital crib. And I just kept saying to myself, yes, I feel so lucky and blessed that they're here, but having to connect with them now that I actually get to be at home in my own environment, able to pick them up when they cry, not told don't touch them. Like, it's, for me, I feel like I'm myself. I'm a mother now, and
it was like the final piece, getting to take them home and actually be their mother, their decision maker.
Yeah, I think it's also frees you from other people's opinions and what things you should do, and having to listen to that daily with each nurse that came in, and it gets a bit draining when you're trying to, it's also very hard when you're trying to be strong for them, and there's moments when you're in the hospital and a nurse will turn around and say something, and you're trying to be happy and they trigger something off and you just want to burst into tears because they've said something wrong to you. and then you can't leave because you're in a hospital zone with them, for them. So it makes it very difficult. So yes, I've had a few moments like that in the hospital, but you make through it, and I feel like I'm on the right side of the path.
So just to clarify, how long were you vegan before the round of IVF where you got pregnant? It wasn't an IVF though, was it? It was an ovulation.
Probably 2 years, because I've been pregnant and they're, close to 5 months now. So, I was probably close to 2 years. But I had a cycle that was normal, but I just haven't lost enough weight. So I did so many methods to try and drop those extra kilos, but my condition just likes to hold on to them, and I didn't want to wait around to see if my body would regulate on its own, because I'm getting to the stage in my life I've been trying for so long. I just needed that push to help me have kids, because I don't want to be 40 and trying to have kids and have more issues with my body or anything like that. So, because my mum had my brother at 39 and had a lot of complications, so I just didn't want to be like her. I wanted to have them at least a little bit earlier in life than that, because I started trying for kids at 21 and I'm 29 now. I find that, you might be healthy in an aspect like eating well, but retaining all this weight still, it wasn't dropping off. And even working out, because when you work out, you create muscle and, healthy muscle. So, and it's frustrating when you're going, okay, well, my muscle mass has gone up, but my fat's gone down, but I'm still my same weight. Yeah. The IVF is BMI, which you have to be under a certain BMI to start. So
I'm so, so happy for you and so grateful that you agreed to come onto the show and share your story, because I know that so many women out there are going through something similar to what you went through, and, you give them such a huge piece of hope and motivation, inspiration to keep moving forward like you did and keep going until they find a path that works for them. And it seems like, a whole food, plant-based, a vegan diet in this instance worked for you. And so that's so wonderful to hear.
That's all right. Thank you.
You again, Christine. I just wanted to mention, if you haven't yet subscribed to this podcast, I share new content every Sunday, sometimes Monday, mostly recovery stories of people who have adopted a low-fat, whole food vegan diet to help them address their chronic diseases or any other kind of ailments or illnesses that they may have. I also interview doctors, psychologists, naturopaths, nutritionists, any kind of specialist expert in the area of a low-fat, whole food vegan diet. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. If you have subscribed but you haven't yet left me a 5-star rating because you love the show so much and you want to leave a review saying how awesome the show is, I would be so happy with that, just because it sounds like I just want flattery, but your flattery helps to promote this podcast so that more and more people can find it on iTunes and Stitcher and social media. If you share it, like it, all those types of things, it means that more people can hear these stories that may be living with heart disease, cancer, type 2 diabetes, PCOS, infertility, rheumatoid arthritis, multiple sclerosis, chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia. There are so many different people and stories on this podcast, and they will continue to grow and share new episodes, new people, new stories with everyone. So I really hope that if you have the time to subscribe, leave a rating and a review, it would really help me and my purpose of spreading hope across the world that there is, potentially an incredibly wonderful, kind, sustainable, beautiful solution to people's health. So please help me and help others. That'd be great. Thank you so much. See you next week. Bye.